Hi, I'd like to share with you some of chapter one of one of my favorite novels called The Number One Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. And I'm hoping that you can see my screen. I have opened the first few pages that I'm going to read from. And this is chapter one, The Daddy. Mara Matsue had a detective agency in Africa at the foot of Kagale Hill. These were its assets: a tiny white van, two desks, two chairs, a telephone, and an old typewriter. Then there was a teapot in which Mara Matsue, the only private detective in Botswana, brewed red bush tea, and three mugs, one for herself, one for her secretary, and one for the client. What else does a detective agency really need? Detective agencies rely on human intuition and intelligence, both of which Ma Ramatsue had in abundance. No inventory could ever include those, of course. But there was also the view, which again could appear on no inventory. How could any such list describe what one saw when one looked out from Ma Ramatsue's door? To the front, an acacia tree, the thorn tree which dots the wide edges of the Kalahari, the great white thorns a warning, the olive gray leaves, by contrast, so delicate in its branches in the late afternoon or on or in the cool of the early morning. One might see a go-away bird, or hear it rather, and beyond the acacia, over the dusty road, the roofs of the town under cover of trees and scrub brush, on the horizon, in a blue shimmer of heat, the hills like improbable, overgrown termite mounds. Everybody called her Ma Ramatsue, although if people wanted to be formal, they would have addressed her as Meh Ma Ramatsue. This is the right thing for a person of stature, but which she had never used of herself. So it was always Ma Ramatsue rather than Precious Ramatsue, a name which very few people employed. She was a good detective and a good woman in a good country, one might say. She loved her country, Botswana, which is a place of peace, and she loved Africa for all its trials. I am not ashamed to be called an African patriot, said Ma Ramatsue. I love all the people whom God made, but I especially know how to love the people who live in this place. They are my people, my brothers and sisters. It is my duty to help them to solve the mysteries in their lives. That is what I am called to do. In idle moments, when there were no pressing matters to be dealt with, and when everybody seemed to be sleepy from the heat, she would sit under her acacia tree. It was a dusty place to sit, and the chickens would occasionally come and peck about her feet. But it was a place which seemed to encourage thought. It was here that Ma Ramatsue would contemplate some of the issues which in everyday life may so easily be pushed to one side. Everything, thought Ma Ramatsue, has been something before. Here I am, the only lady private detective in the whole of Botswana, sitting in front of my detective agency. But only a few years ago, there was no detective agency. And before that, before there were even any buildings there were just the acacia trees and the riverbed in the distance and the Kalahari over there, so close. In those days, there was no Botswana even, just the Bechuana Land Protectorate. And before that again was Kama's country, and the lions with the dry wind in their manes. But look at it now, a detective agency right here in Gaborone with me, the fat lady detective, sitting outside and thinking these thoughts about how what is one thing today becomes quite another thing tomorrow. Ma Ramatsue set up the number one detective agency, lady